Welcome back to Terror and Urban Myths. Tonight we're exploring a story. It's a story that reminds us that sometimes the line between the living and the dead, well, it can be terrifyingly blurred. If you find these journeys into the unknown as fascinating as we do, don't forget to subscribe and give us a like.
What I think is particularly intriguing about this story is the way it explores possession. It's not the way we usually think about it,
Right.
Not the really dramatic kind of possession.
Oh, yeah.
This is more of a subtle, insidious takeover that really makes you question where one person's will ends and the desires of a spirit begin.
Okay, so this story is about Samantha, a young woman who is, well, she's described as spirit prone,
Mm.
which seems to suggest that she's kind of sensitive to the spirit world. She's also new to her company.
Yeah.
And she gets sent on a business trip to Seoul with a colleague named Jong, someone she barely knows.
Yeah, so we've got this really interesting setup. A woman who's in tune with the spirit world, and she's suddenly thrust into a totally unfamiliar environment. Oh, and with a virtual stranger, too.
And it doesn't take long for the story to start building this sense of unease.
Oh.
During their car ride to Seoul, Jong gets a call from his mother, and they have this incredibly heated argument.
Oh, wow.
Witnesses actually recall Jong saying things like, "How can you ask me for money? And my life is a mess because of you." And, you can just imagine this raw anger and resentment. It just has this really heavy tension over the entire car ride.
I see. Well, this initial conflict is so important, right? Because it introduces us to Zhang's inner turmoil, to all his unresolved issues. And these, as we'll see, become absolutely central to the whole story as it unfolds. It's almost as if this big emotional outburst cracks open a door, like he's suddenly vulnerable to forces he can't see.
And to try to lighten the mood, Samantha, because she's so comfortable with all this paranormal stuff, she suggests telling Jong a scary story. Now, this small detail actually highlights her openness to the otherworldly, I think, and maybe even foreshadows her susceptibility to what's about to happen.
It also speaks to her empathy, too. She's trying to connect with Zhang in spite of this, uncomfortable atmosphere, but she might be accidentally opening a door to something a lot darker than she realizes.
Upon arriving in Seoul, things take a strange turn. Jong ends up sending Samantha to their hotel alone. He says he has to deal with some personal matters. So she's alone in a foreign city. And Samantha finds herself being followed by a strange, bald man with these piercing eyes and unnervingly small pupils.
This is where the story starts to tap into our primal fears, don't you think? Like that fear of being hunted by something unknown. And the way the stalker is described with his intense gaze and those unusual pupils, it's incredibly unsettling. It really amps up the sense that something is deeply wrong.
Jong, though, he's still reachable by phone.
Hmm.
And he guides Samantha through these confusing streets. He ends up leading her towards an alleyway where she stumbles upon a hidden bar. It's described as, well, both alluring and mysterious. Like, it promises a safe haven from the outside world.
I think it's helpful to think of the bar as this symbolic space, kind of threshold between the familiar and the uncanny, a place where the usual rules don't apply anymore, appearances deceive, and where danger can hide beneath this veneer of beauty.
And inside, Samantha encounters this group of strikingly beautiful women. And they're dressed in, well, in provocative lingerie. And they greet her with these eerie, enigmatic smiles. These women seem almost otherworldly.
Yeah.
Their beauty, it's tinged with this unsettling aura. They agree to help Samantha hide from her stalker, but their assistance feels off.
I think these women represent a classic archetype. Figures who lure unsuspecting souls into their web. Their beauty, it's just a distraction. It's a mask that's concealing this darkness that permeates the entire place.
Yeah.
They're both alluring and dangerous. And Samantha, because she's looking for safety, she's drawn to them.
So when Samantha tries to find the bathroom, these women lead her through this maze of, well, they're dimly lit hallways and a seemingly endless spiraling staircase. It's a really disorienting experience, and it just reinforces the feeling that she's entered a realm where logic no longer holds sway.
This descent into the depths of the bar, it's almost symbolic, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
A kind of journey into the subconscious where fears take shape.
Yeah.
Like that endless staircase. It's the feeling of being totally trapped, lost in a world with no escape.
Upon returning to the bar, Samantha's relieved to find Jong sitting in a booth. But her relief quickly turns to unease. There's a fresh blood stain on her glass, a detail that's, well, both unsettling and unexplained. And then a singer takes the stage. But instead of a face, there's just this gaping black void.
This is where the story shifts toward outright horror, isn't it?
Right.
The blood stain, the faceless singer, those are classic symbols of death and decay. And I think they're hinting at the true nature of the bar and everyone in it.
And Zhang's friends, they're staring at her with the same empty, piercing eyes as those women who greeted her at the door. Their laughter feels hollow, devoid of any genuine mirth. It creates this chilling, almost predatory atmosphere.
It's like she's surrounded by mannequins that are mimicking human behavior. It plays on our fear of things that look human but lack, the essence of life.
Like looking into a mirror that reflects something monstrous back at you. Overwhelmed, Samantha tries to flee the bar. But she's stopped by one of the women. The woman warns her, the bald man is still there. And this statement is chilling on two levels. First, because of the implied threat, of course. But second, Samantha never said that the stalker was bald. So how could they possibly know?
Right. This raises a crucial question. How much of what Samantha's experiencing is real? And how much of it is being orchestrated by something or someone else? I mean, these women clearly know more than they're letting on. It suggests there's a deeper, more sinister purpose to all of this.
And instead of the alleyway, Samantha finds herself in this desolate construction zone, a place that simply didn't exist before. It's as if reality itself is warping around her, just intensifying her feeling of disorientation. She eventually stumbles back to her hotel, exhausted, convinced it was all just a bad dream.
The construction zone is like a liminal space, don't you think? A place between worlds where the boundaries of reality become fluid and easily manipulated. Samantha's escape from the bar, it's not a true escape. It's more of a transition into a deeper level of this nightmare.
But the nightmare isn't over. The next day, while trying to contact Jong, Samantha learned something devastating. Jong committed suicide a week earlier. The man she saw in the bar, the man she spoke to on the phone, it couldn't have been him.
This revelation shatters Samantha's whole understanding of what happened. It forces her to confront the possibility that what she witnessed wasn't a dream, but a genuine encounter with something beyond the realm of the living. And it makes her question everything she thought she knew about that night.
And here's where things take an even more unsettling turn. As these fragmented memories of her trip start coming back, Samantha notices how her actions, even her words during that time, were off, almost as if someone else was subtly influencing her behavior. This leads to a horrifying realization. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter. Jong's spirit, tormented and seeking something, had attached itself to her. He was using her body as a vessel to express his pent-up pain and anger.
This concept of a spirit seeking solace, or maybe even release, in the living, it's both tragic and terrifying. It suggests that death doesn't necessarily bring peace, that unresolved emotions can linger, seeking some kind of outlet in the world they left behind.
And if you're already feeling the chill of this story, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give us a like. We'll be back soon with part 2. We'll delve deeper into the cultural context and explore the implications of Jong's spirit's influence on Samantha. As we delve deeper into Samantha's experience, it's important to, I think, consider the cultural context. In Korea, you see shamanism has a really big influence on how people understand the spirit world, especially the whole concept of possession.
Right. It's not always like those, sensationalized portrayals you see in Western media. Korean shamanism, it often views possession not just as this forceful takeover, but also as a more subtle influence, almost like a clinging presence that affects a person's thoughts, emotions, actions, often without them even realizing it.
So it's not always about, dramatic exorcisms and stuff. It can be much more insidious, right? This gradual shift in someone's personality, almost like someone else is slowly influencing their mind.
Exactly. And this is much more in line with what Samantha seems to have gone through. The changes in her behavior were, they were subtle. Her words, they seemed totally normal at the time. But in light of Jong's suicide, they take on a whole new meaning.
It's like, remember that tense car ride to Seoul, when Jong had that explosive argument with his mother? Well, it's later revealed that during that car ride, Samantha made a comment about someone being disrespectful to their mother. At the time, it just seemed like a random observation, but looking back, it's incredibly eerie.
It's as if Jong's resentment towards his mother, all that unresolved anger, was already finding a way to express itself through Samantha, wouldn't you say? It's a chilling example of how subtle these influences can be, how they can just seep into everyday conversations.
And it gets even more unsettling when you consider what happened in the bar. Samantha, she just suddenly lashes out at Jong's manager. She starts accusing him of spreading rumors. It's this torrent of anger and insults, this fierce defense of Jong that seemed so out of character for her.
Yes, and after we learn about Zhang's suicide and the financial struggles he faced because of his mother's gambling, well, Samantha's outburst takes on this whole chilling new meaning. It's as if Zhang's spirit, burdened by all these painful memories and the weight of his own death, was actually using her to confront those who had wronged him.
This idea of a possessed person acting out the desires of, well, of the deceased is deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
It makes you question free will, the boundaries between oneself and another, and the power of all those unresolved emotions.
It also makes you wonder about Samantha's, her spirit-prone nature. Did that somehow make her a target for Zhang's spirit? Was she like a beacon drawing him in?
Almost like a cautionary tale, like the sensitivity to the spirit world, while it might offer a glimpse into other realms, could also make someone more vulnerable to whatever influences exist there.
Right. And being in a totally unfamiliar environment, a foreign city like Seoul with all the unfamiliar customs and language, well, that could have heightened Samantha's vulnerability. It could have created a psychological and emotional space for Jong's spirit to really take hold.
It's like being lost at sea, and clinging to any piece of driftwood that floats by, without even knowing what dangers might be lurking beneath the surface.
Exactly. Samantha's story reminds us that we're not always in control, especially when we're venturing into unfamiliar territory, both physically and, I think, spiritually.
This brings us to another really intriguing part of the story, the bar and its inhabitants. Those strangely beautiful women, the ones who greeted Samantha with those eerie smiles, the faceless singer, they all seem to exist on the periphery of this possession, like silent witnesses, or maybe even facilitators.
The bar and its occupants, they represent a liminal space, a threshold between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. It's a place where, well, the rules of reality are distorted, and the intentions of everyone there are shrouded in mystery.
It's like Samantha, while she was trying to hide from the stalker, she stumbled into this gathering of spirits, a place where the veil between worlds is thin and where she became vulnerable to their influence.
And the women in the bar, with their beauty and those unsettling smiles, they might represent the allure and the danger of the spirit world. They offer comfort and aid, but at what price? Maybe something Samantha just couldn't understand.
Like making a deal with the devil you can't even see.
Right, and then there's that chilling warning, the bald man is still there. A detail they couldn't have known. It implies an awareness that goes beyond the ordinary.
They're not just human, right? It's like there's something else. Beings with knowledge and powers beyond the realm of the living.
Their presence adds a layer of complexity to this whole story. It makes you wonder, what was their role in Zhang's possession of Samantha? Were they just passive observers, active participants, something in between?
Yeah, it's a question that really lingers. This part of the story reminds us that the spirit world, just like the human world, is full of mysteries, motives we may never fully understand. And that's really at the heart of what makes this story so unsettling.
It's the not knowing, the sense that there are forces at play beyond our comprehension. That can be the most terrifying part of any encounter with the unknown.
This feeling of unease, the unanswered questions, that's what stays with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been talking about this really unsettling story of Samantha and the lingering spirit of Jong. We've uncovered the cultural context, Korean shamanism. We've talked about those subtle ways possession can actually manifest. But now I think we should really examine what this whole experience reveals about, things like grief, trauma, and that really delicate boundary between the living and the dead.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me most about this story is how Jong's spirit isn't this, malevolent entity out for revenge.
Right.
Instead, he comes across as this tormented soul, someone who is just yearning for connection and release.
It's like his suicide. Instead of bringing him peace, just trapped him in this state of unrest, right? All his unresolved emotions, well, they're just desperately seeking an outlet in the world that he left behind.
And Samantha, because of her sensitivity to the spirit world, she unknowingly became a conduit for Jong's pain and frustration. His anger with his mother, his despair over his situation, it all seems to find expression through her, wouldn't you say?
It makes you wonder, did Jong intentionally set out to harm Samantha? Or was he just drawn to her, desperate for any connection, even if it meant, manipulating her?
It's a tough question, isn't it? Maybe his intentions were a mix of both. That yearning for solace intertwined with, I don't know, maybe a subconscious desire to lash out at the world that had failed him.
This idea of a spirit seeking solace in a living person, even if it causes harm, it's fascinating. But it's also terrifying. It suggests that death doesn't always equal resolution. And that the wounds of life, they can linger
Yeah.
and seek comfort, maybe even in the warmth of a living soul.
It makes you think, doesn't it? About the importance of dealing with unresolved conflicts, of offering peace to those who have passed on.
Right.
Perhaps if we do that, we can actually help ease their transition and maybe even prevent them from becoming trapped in this cycle of pain and unrest.
And Samantha's experience, it also shows the huge impact of trauma,
Yeah.
not just on the person who actually experiences it, but also on those connected to them, sometimes in ways we don't expect. Jong's suicide created this, ripple effect of pain and confusion. It drew Samantha into its depths and left her questioning her own sanity, really. It reminds us that trauma doesn't exist in isolation. It radiates outward. It affects relationships, communities, and, as this story shows, even the balance between the living and the dead.
It's true. And throughout Samantha's ordeal, she struggles with doubt. She's unsure if what she's experiencing is real or if it's all in her head, right? The construction zone appearing out of nowhere, the faceless singer, the blood stain, all of that could just be hallucinations brought on by stress and exhaustion.
But the fact that Jong's suicide is confirmed, well, it gives her experiences a really unsettling credibility. It suggests that what she saw and felt, however strange and unsettling, was actually rooted in reality, a reality that stretches beyond what we normally understand.
Samantha's story, I think it challenges us to reconsider what we think we know about reality, to accept that there might be forces at work that we can't see or understand, forces that could be shaping our experiences in ways we don't fully grasp.
Right. Her encounter with Jong's spirit is like this powerful reminder. It reminds us that the world is much stranger and more mysterious than we often realize,
Absolutely.
and that there are shadows, well, they lurk at the edges of our perception, and whispers, they come from beyond the veil, to remind us that we're just one small part of this vast and interconnected web of existence.
As we navigate this complex and often unsettling reality, we have to approach the unknown with caution, but also with respect.
Yeah. We have to be mindful of that delicate balance between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And we have to honor the memories of those who have passed, to make sure that their stories, both the tragic and the triumphant ones, continue to resonate.
Well, thank you for joining us as we explored John's spirit. If you enjoyed this journey into the unsettling, remember to subscribe and leave us a comment with your thoughts. And until next time, keep in mind that the world is full of mysteries. And sometimes the scariest things are the ones we just can't explain.
Sleep well.